Oh, I have been waiting to make this video for quite some time. This video is gonna be two things. One, it's gonna be a bit of a rant, bit of a video essay on YouTubers who cultivate an audience via YouTube and then go out and do traditional stand-up. It's also gonna be a review of Kurtis Connor's Python, both Noel Miller specials, and Ryan Long's most recent special. Now, I'm gonna use these four specials as an example of some do's and don'ts when it comes to cultivating an audience on YouTube and then trying to do stand-up from your YouTube audience. We are not going to talk about specials from comedians that released on YouTube. Say your Shane Gillis's, Sam Morrill, Joe List, to name a few. I've also seen Gus Johnson live, so I'll talk about that a little bit. He doesn't have a released special, but that was also interesting and pertinent to the conversation. If there's a YouTuber who has a comedy special that I haven't seen or have even heard of, then please leave it in the comments down below. I also have a comedy special. It's called Trauma Bonding. It's free here on YouTube. I was doing stand-up for 10 years first, then I got into YouTube, so check that out. But first, yes, I'm officially in LA. Hell yeah. What better way to give myself a nice warm LA welcome than to shit on my peers in both of my niche fields? No, I promise. Some of these reviews are favorable and some of them are not. So let's get started. One of the most requested things that I review ever since this channel became whatever the hell it isn't currently. Jake, you gotta review Kurtis Connor's special. Jake, you gotta review Python. Kurtis Connor has a mullet and a mustache. You have to review his stand-up special. Listen, before I get into Kurtis Connor, and then Gus Johnson, and then Ryan Long, and then Noel Miller, in that order, I'm going to talk generally about what it means for a YouTuber to have a stand-up special. So usually when you have an audience on YouTube, your audience is spread out amongst the entire world, you know, which is insane. I have 180,000 subscribers. Some of you fuckers are from all over the place. So let's say hypothetically, I want to go on tour. The people who are in Australia, you know, the people who are in the Middle East, you know, the people who are in Europe, they're not exactly helpful when I'm trying to sell tickets in North Carolina, are they? You know, but once you become a YouTuber, say like Gus Johnson, Kurtis Connor, Noel Miller, you have such a following of millions and millions of people that I have seen a lot of these YouTubers, they travel across the country, sometimes internationally, and they are not comedians. They are not comedians. They are YouTubers who talk to the camera, who have probably, more often than not, very minimal experience actually on stage. They haven't had to. Their entire experience up to this point has been in front of a camera. Now, some of these YouTubers, I believe Kurtis Connor and Gus Johnson both did stand up while they were doing YouTube. You know, they both were open micers, but to be frank, their careers took off once they started doing YouTube, and they were catering much heavier to a YouTube audience their entire career. So once you spend a decade catering to your online audience, your parasocial audience, instead of honing those muscles, those stand-up muscles, you just say, I've cultivated an audience, now I have the ability to go on tour. Because people aren't gonna let you book their place if you don't have the numbers first. That's been the worst thing to happen to stand-up, is you have to have the numbers first before you can book. But how do I get good if I don't book before I get the numbers? You see the catch-22 that we're in? So this phenomenon becomes YouTubers who have very good YouTube content. I love Kurtis Connor. I loved Gus Johnson, you know, controversy aside. I know Gus got into some hot water, and we're gonna be exclusively talking about the merits of the stuff, and we're not gonna get into the other stuff. But I believe Kurtis Connor's special Python, and when I saw Gus Johnson live, both exhibit this phenomenon, where they're a YouTuber first and foremost, and a stand-up second. Now, Python, listen. Kurtis, love you, brother. Big fan of your YouTube content, okay? Big fan of your mustache and mullet, okay? Folks, let's review the special. This was tough. It's not good. It's not good. Whoa, what? Shots fired. Oh no. Kurtis, I'm so sorry. Overall, Kurtis's material is very, very toothless, and there are comedians who don't exactly dive into edgy topics purposefully, and their material is still very, very, very good. Kurtis kind of meanders around subject matter. For the first couple of minutes, he's talking about dogs and cats, and then the entire middle chunk becomes about milk. And at one point, he even has like a PowerPoint presentation, a visual aid, akin to Dimitri Martin. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but rather it's seeming like it's something that's breaking the form of stand-up and doing something new and innovative. It just kind of seems like he's taking his YouTube bullshit with him to stand-up. And for a 40-minute special, to have a big middle chunk taken up by a multimedia presentation, when it's not even a full hour. Look, my special's 30 minutes. So, I wasn't trying to fill the time and make it a full hour. I said, I got enough for a half hour, and I called it quits, fellas, okay? I grew up on 30-minute Comedy Central specials. 30 minutes is toit. I don't need 10 minutes of you meandering with a multimedia presentation about something that, frankly, I couldn't give less of a shit about. Now, also, Kurtis's special is edited very, very poorly. Kurtis, I'm so sorry. It seems like there's a lot of dead air that is removed because the air is dead, if that makes sense. A lot of the times, these specials, they're recorded in a way that there's a lot of dead air between, the audience is aware we're recording a special, the audience is encouraged to laugh a little harder. But when you overproduce a special and you over-edit a special, what you want out of a special really is to make it seem like it's not edited at all. It's almost like there's no cuts, And again, there are obviously cuts, but you hide them really well with the editing. It feels like, and I'm just shooting in the dark, it feels like Kurtis was on stage for an hour and a half, and this was the 40 minutes that was usable, if that makes sense. The crowd, I don't know if they're just not having a good time or if they're just not mic'd up properly. Kurtis is utilizing the stage very, very poorly. Everything about Kurtis's performance screams amateur. Kurtis, I'm so sorry. From the pacing back and forth, not motivated by the performance, but coming out of him out of anxiety, I assume. It's what it looks like, at least. And it looks like he had some production. Kurtis, if you let me help you direct your special, brother. I had one camera and a phone and nobody else. I had a lapel. That was a dog shit lapel I got off the TikTok shop. And the camera angles where you choose to stay static while you're jumping up around back and forth on stage, or the shots that do follow, but they're from a side profile. The main wide needs to follow you, Kurtis, and the side profile needs to stay a side profile. And the shots you have from the audience, while in the beginning seem cool, just become distracting. Kurtis, I understand everything you were going for here, and it just didn't hit the marks. And the material, like I said, was toothless, but occasionally you would do like a really, really dark Anthony Jeselnik joke, but not about anything, just very traditional, very punny, very dad humor, which again is very reminiscent of your YouTube videos, which it works in your YouTube videos. I love your YouTube content, but to just do your YouTube content, like this isn't an audience full of people, what I'm doing right here talking to a camera. This is talking to a camera. When I talk to an audience of people, you have to do something else. You have to be catering to an audience full of people. You're not catering to a camera anymore. You're not in your bedroom anymore. It's a performance. Comedians are supposed to get up on stage and act like, rock stars of their craft, and it just feels like you're doing karaoke, brother. It feels like you're not doing stand-up comedy. It feels like you're doing comedy as a bit. Wouldn't it be funny if I did stand-up? There's a layer of irony that just misses, where you're not so ironic that you're doing a Tim and Eric, parody of the form type thing, but you're also too ironic to be traditionally doing quality stand-up. So you're in this weird, uncanny middle area where, thank God you have a built-in audience, thank God there's subscribers who are going to come see you regardless. One of the things I think is dangerous about, not dangerous, let me relax. One of the things that I think is an issue with YouTubers who do stand-up is they don't have to get good. Stay with me. When you have a dedicated audience on YouTube, Instagram, what have you, they're going to keep coming no matter what. I have seen YouTubers who don't do traditional stand-up do variety stuff, variety show stuff. They play board games on stage. They just do hour-long AMAs, The standards that these audiences have is abysmal, and they will eat anything up. So if you're trying to do stand-up with an audience like this, you don't really have to get good at stand-up. You're an amateur comedian, and you've already sold out clubs? You're already filling out rooms? Why get better at this? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And comedy clubs have loved this. When I saw Gus Johnson live, I loved Gus Johnson's sketches. At the time, he was doing a lot of work with Comedy Central. I thought he had some great musical stand-up bits. Again, similar to an early Bo Burnham era. And when I saw him live, the controversy hadn't happened yet. Sabrina was actually there. It was insane. But it had the same energy, where because this person had a huge following online, whether it be YouTube or social media or what have you, they were able to sell out. They sold out. Gus Johnson sold out Good Nights Comedy Club. And the show was good. And look, Python was good. I'm sure the people in the room had a great time seeing somebody they're a fan of do an hour of material. I bet that was fun. I bet everybody got their money's worth. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the quality from a stand-up lens, from a traditional stand-up perspective, is lacking because we're not coming at this from a traditional stand-up lens. We're coming at this with YouTubers trying stand-up. So when I saw Gus Johnson live, it felt like when I watched Kurtis Connor's Python. It felt like an amateur open micer getting an hour's worth of stage time in front of an audience that loves them, which is crazy because the stand-up performance will be mediocre and the crowd will love it. And look, I'm going to give Kurtis Connor and Gus Johnson a little bit of praise here because some YouTubers don't even do stand-up when they go on their, tours or whatever. I know some YouTubers prefer to package their stuff in more of a variety show. Some of their YouTubers decide to package their stuff in something that is more akin to their YouTube presence, which makes a lot of sense. So in a way, you haven't alienated your social media audience when you bring them live. You've included them and now they've seen you live, which is very good from a YouTube perspective. But as a stand-up, would I recommend Gus Johnson live or Kurtis Connor's Python to somebody that's like a stand-up nerd who wants to see good stand-up? No, I would not. So before I move on to Ryan Long's most recent stand-up special, let me give a formal review of Kurtis Connor's Python. Kurtis Connor is a very, very likable YouTuber who makes very good YouTube videos, whose stand-up just falls flat in a live performance environment. The production was amateur, the performance was amateur, the material was amateur, but I'm very glad that Kurtis has a dedicated fan base. As a fellow mullet-having, mustache-wearing white man, I'm giving Kurtis Connor's Python a 4 out of 10. I'm sorry. Now, while Kurtis Connor's material played it safe to a fault and was toothless, I believe the opposite is true about Ryan Long's most recent special. Now, while Ryan Long probably has the most stand-up experience out of anybody we're going to talk about in this video, I still have him in this category because I believe he got most of his audience from his anti-woke, enlightened, centrist, conservative, contrarian, sketch comedy that he has put here on YouTube. It's also on your short-form platforms as well, but the man makes anti-woke content. Now listen, when it comes to conservatives doing stand-up comedy, there's a long history of conservatives just being painfully unfunny. Whether it's in film, whether it's in sketch, whether it's in stand-up, conservatives just don't really understand media literacy, irony, the mechanisms of comedy. Which puts me in a tight spot when talking about Ryan Long. Because here's my issue with Ryan Long. He has all the same issues that we've talked about previously with the Kurtis Connors and the Gus Johnsons and the having the dedicated fan base and the not need to get better at stand-up. What Ryan Long does do, however, is he is technically a good performer. He is technically good at stand-up. Now, what his stand-up is and the material itself is a completely different subject. You can be a good singer and sing a bad song. And instead of playing it too safe like your Kurtis Connors or your Gus Johnsons, Ryan Long has specifically dove into a very niche market. And it is a market that needs to be filled because there's not a lot of conservative comedians. Now, I don't know too much about Ryan Long. He might say he's not a conservative. He might say he's just some enlightened centrist. He might just be getting a bag. Who fucking cares? But after watching his special, here's what I'll say about the material of his special. Most of his stand-up in regards to the material is fine. It does walk that line, which all good comedy does, but there are times when he crosses that line and the audience that's there with him fucks with it. But me as a viewer at home, not so much. Now, I'm not a part of Ryan Long's audience. Ryan Long's audience is a part of Ryan Long's audience. I didn't go see the show, and I bet if I did go see the show, I'd be like, I'm uncomfy. And I'd be uncomfy with the rest of the room laughing. The subject matter of Ryan Long's material that I do find a little, abhorrent is it feels like classic, ignorant 80s and 90s sexist comedy. but without the ignorance that the 80s and 90s had wrapped around it. Ryan Long is taking the worst parts about traditional stand-up, a very male-dominated field, and toes the line just enough just so he can tip over the line to a very sexist, misogynist place. With just enough plausible deniability where he goes, hey man, it's just a joke, it's just a joke, these aren't my real opinions, you know? Now, he's not doing the Dave Chappelle thing where he does 5 specials in a row that shit on trans people. He's not going that far with it. He's towing the line a lot better than your Chappelle's on one end of the spectrum and your Curtis Connors on the other end of the spectrum. But that's why I say he's good at stand-up, but I don't like the subject matter, because he is technically walking that line in a way, just purposefully crossing it enough and being so smug that he did it. Ha ha ha, you're laughing at my sexist material. He also has some throwaway lines that does pander a little bit to anti-vax sentiment. You know, he uses the R word very liberally. The next comic mentions the R word up top, but we'll get into Noel in a minute. And the differences between somebody like Noel Miller versus somebody like Ryan Long talking about a joke where the subject matter is saying the R word. This is what I hate about conservative comedians who come out like, yeah, I'm not supposed to say this. I'm saying the edgy thing you're not supposed to say. And they have this punk rock aesthetic, you know? But when you co-opt punk rock aesthetic so that you can spew conservative talking points, you're not a punk, you're still a Republican. Being a Republican and being a conservative is the least punk rock thing in the world you can do. And the end product just becomes Facebook boomer humor that you peddle to the same conservative, vapid audience that would like it on Facebook. I will say some positive things about Ryan Long's special. For one, where Curtis Connors' production was ass, Ryan Long had some very good production on his shit. He had a very intimate audience. I'm not sure where it was filmed. He says he was living in New York City. Camera work was really solid. The crowd did seem lively and was mic'd up appropriately. The editing and sound mixing was a lot better than on Curtis Connors' special. But so far, my choices for YouTuber special have been toothless, trite, amateur open micer going on for 40 minutes, or conservative, boomer-coded, not punk doing anti-vax commentary to me. So far, YouTube specials has not shown me grace. God, is there any YouTuber out there who is doing quality stand-up outside of their quality YouTube career? Is there anybody? What's this? Noel. Let's talk about Noel Miller for a second. So, we all know Noel, you know, the better half of the Tiny Meat Gang. We don't have to talk about Cody. We don't have to talk about Cody. We're talking about Noel. Now, Noel is a critically acclaimed filmmaker in his own right. He wrote and directed all of those Tiny Meat Gang music videos. He produced both of the specials we're about to talk about. And he has been a performing, touring stand-up comedian for quite some time. So did he do it? Did Noel beat the game? And is he just good at all of the things? Yes. Yes, he is. Now, Noel Miller's first special, Stop Crying, was filmed in LA. It was filmed in a massive audience. He had a balcony, this man. And even though it felt like his first special, it felt very green in regards to his production, in regards to the audience that was actually there. A lot of them applauded because it was their first time seeing a stand-up show. Cinematography felt like, oof, what is this, a concert? What are we doing, you know? And the lighting was effective, but not really motivated. It was just there. These are all things I say to set the stage to show the improvement in the years. Now, the material itself. Yes. Noel got a little spicy with the subject matter. He opens up with a bit about whether or not he uses the R word privately. And even though the bit is about him using the R word privately, he doesn't use it in the special because he knows that the bit he's talking about is the weight that that word has behind the scenes. Like, the joke is about the weight of the word. He's not just using the word willy-nilly like some other comedians. He likens the R word to an addiction to cigarettes. Woo! I'm back on that R word. An excellent premise. You know, that doesn't glorify the use of it. It's a fourth-dimensional joke that requires more than just your surface-level thinking. Which is the issue I have with Curtis and Ryan's specials. Curtis's special was so lackluster and so just, you want to talk about dogs? You want to talk about milk? You know, there's no thinking involved, you know? And with Ryan's special, you're not thinking either because he's spoon-feeding you the opinion that he knows you already have because his propaganda made you feel that way in the first place. You're just a primed sleeper cell that his conservative words are awaking right now. Whereas Noel will take spicy subject matter and he gets into it and he does what an actual comedian is supposed to do, is he asks you questions that make the audience uncomfortable, but not so much that he has to be this comedic anti-hero, you know? yeah, I'll say all the things that you don't want to say. No, he relates to his audience and saying, hey, aren't I just as fucked up as you? Aren't we all a little fucked up for doing this? Noel's material and Noel's stage presence, neither of those feel amateur. Both of those feel earned, experienced, rehearsed, practiced. You could have told me this guy is just a comedian and not a YouTuber, and I would believe you. It doesn't feel like he got his following from another thing and then was like, well, I have this audience here, even though he did. Now, let's be clear. At the beginning of the special, he says, how many of you guys, is this your first comedy show? And the whole crowd, imagine having an audience of people who have never seen stand-up before, and you get to be their first comedian. You can tell in the way that, Noel does his stand-up that he is acutely aware of what his audience is into, what his audience knows, what his audience doesn't know. He even says, this is a lot different than my YouTube, isn't it? Because he knows he needs to make one thing for YouTube and one thing for stand-up, something that Kurtis and Ryan and Gus don't know. Real quick before I move on, let me give Ryan Long a genuine rating. I gave Kurtis Connor a 4 out of 10. Now, even though Ryan Long's special upset me more as a writer and a leftist, I am going to give it a more favorable review because it was technically better, if even, marginally. I'm going to give Ryan Long's special a 5 out of 10. That's a 4 for Kurtis and a 5 for Ryan. I'm going to give Gus Johnson live, back when I saw him 6-7 years ago. I'm going to give his live performance a review because that was essentially like watching a special. And even though that special isn't released anywhere, I saw it live, you can take my word for it. I'm going to give Gus Johnson a 6.5 out of 10. He did some traditional stand-up that was very good, told some long-winded stories, as amateur comedians would do, did some of his songs from the hits from YouTube, ended on a fun little thing that was like something special for the audience. So we're improving. We're going from a 4 to a 5 to a 6. Stop crying, don't cry, I forget the name of it. The crying special that Noel did. I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. Whoa, what? Is there a pattern happening here? And did Noel take all of the things that he did well in the first special and then do them even better in the next one? Yes. Is your pattern recognition kicking in? Noel's most recent special, I believe it's called Death is FOMO, something along those lines. I don't research these. I just consume and then spew. I binge and purge. Noel Miller is a more seasoned stand-up in this one. He's a more seasoned director in this one, and the audience he has is even more cultivated in the last one. Now, where in the last one, he was in LA, and it was a big, big audience with the balcony, which is always difficult because there's so much, variables you have to manage when you're on stage that one audience member being a little off, the whole room. It's a lot easier for the uncontrolled variables to run amok in a venue like that. Whereas in his next special, he's in Philly, and he's in a much more intimate setting, which is a benefit to the special. My favorite Chappelle special with these Netflix, ones, was the bird revelation. A, because it doesn't talk about trans people in it, and B, it was the smallest crowd he had. Now, Noel Miller has more command of the space in the next one, even though it is a smaller space. Rather than seeming like an LA YouTuber in front of a massive audience, he seems like a chiseled comedian in front of his crowd. We talked last time in my delivery video about the use of negative space. But Noel really allows funny moments to linger. He allows the audience to take in something and digest it, chew it up, and spit it back out in the form of laughter. The lighting is fantastic. The scenic design, I don't know if that's just the club and if it was chosen for that very reason, or if Noel had a hand in actually designing his own background. There's a lot of elements that go into a special you wouldn't quite think of. What he's wearing, why he's wearing it, how that complements the background, the lighting choices, the editing, when we stay static, when we follow him, when we go tight, when we go wide. The production on Noel's second special is better than the production on the first one, even surpassing the production on Ryan Long's special. Frankly, I think Noel's second special is as good as when comedians, not YouTubers, but comedians, drop their specials onto YouTube. That was the first time I have seen a YouTuber drop a special that was just as quality as traditional stand-up comedians. I would hold it up to Shane Gillis's YouTube special. I would hold it up to Taylor Tomlinson's Netflix stuff. I would say Noel Miller did the Bo Burnham thing, where he transcends the platform that created him, and he is actually just a very, very talented artist and performer. So if you haven't seen Death is FOMO and Stop Crying, I highly recommend watching both of those Noel Miller specials. Kurtis, I am so sorry. I am a big fan of yours, and I was really regretting reviewing your special because I love you dearly. If you think I'm just full of shit and you want to check where I'm coming from, I have many videos about stand-up comedy on my channel. I also have my stand-up special You can compare and contrast and see if it holds a candle to these other specials. My special is called Trauma Bonding. It's right here for free on YouTube. And if you like this and want to see more, please leave in the comments down below. Who do you want to see me talk about? Whether it's a YouTuber whose special I missed, or it's a comedian you want to see a deep dive on. Is there a YouTube trend that you think is fucking stupid? You want me to talk about it? Stand-up related or not? I also have a Patreon that's in the description, as well as you can become a member here on YouTube and you can get videos coming out early, exclusive content, priority with community engagement. But at the very least, if you like me and if you like content like this and want to support it, want to see more of it, then all you have to do is like and subscribe. All that jazz. I appreciate you.